What is next on impacting crypto? And also, is Gary Gensler's job starting to get a little bit antsy? We're going to break it all down for you guys today. Don't miss it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. A couple of things that have been happening, which is the World Economic Forum. This is day 2 of the WEF event, and there's a lot happening in the crypto space. So we'll get into some of the details. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at long-term holding and you want to take some tax advantages, go the route of a crypto IRA. This is one of the places you can, of course, gain a lot of tax benefits. Check it out. Go over and use our link down below. You can get a $100 funding reward if you decide to get started. And you can trade Bitcoin, ETH, all sorts of altcoins, including precious metals. So it's all available over to you guys there. Now, I want to open up with Tether. Tether was kind of front and center. And if Cantor Fitzgerald, who helps oversee Tether's $39 billion in treasury holdings, was actually on a interview set over there at WEF talking about, and it was just a little odd of how it came about, but I want to play a clip for you guys to get you in the framework of what is happening at WEF around crypto. Listen in.
And there's a company that I like called Tether. It's a stable coin. And you know, I manage many of their assets. I want to say it here with you. From what we've seen, and we did a lot of work, they have the money they say they had. In the last attestation, they said they had 86 billion of assets and 83 billion of liabilities. And I've seen a whole lot, and the firm has seen a whole lot, and they have the money. And so there's always been a lot of talk. Do they have it or not? So I'm with you guys saying we've seen it and they have it.
So spot Bitcoin ETF, do you think that's going to restore confidence to the whole sector given what we've seen take place in the last 12 months?
No, that doesn't have anything. That's just a way for Americans to buy. Remember when gold ETFs started? They were very exciting in 2004, and it kind of stayed steady. There was all this hype that everyone's going to buy gold, and oh, come on. So I think Bitcoin ran up. It's kind of going to stay steady. But when the halving comes, it's going to start to rally and grow. So Bitcoin, I think, will grow. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, please do.
Why are Americans having anything to do with Bitcoin anyway? Why do they have anything to do with stablecoin anyway? Well, I could give you money on Venmo, on PayPal. It's not an American thing. This is Americans just cocking around like buying Tesla stock, okay?
Well, they're doing that plenty.
I know they do, but this is a speculative asset for us. But for countries like Argentina, Venezuela, Turkey, these crypto assets matter. You want to hold the dollar, and holding it in a token, right? Holding your dollar in a token is amazing. So I think that's why Tether's doing really well. You realize Tether has $95 billion in issuance?
All right, so take that for what it's worth. Cantor Fitzgerald definitely, paid by Tether, their statement. But the interesting thing here is that WEF conversations are shouldn't say centering, but seem to be leaning toward a lot more in crypto and blockchain. I want to go to this next clip. This is from the NASDAQ CEO talking about what blockchain does for the potential around assets. Listen in.
Well, we actually look at it in terms of kind of the trading business, and that's really between 70 and 75%. Between 20 and 25% of our business today. And then we have our solutions businesses, which is all the data and the analytics, the software solutions, and that's actually between 70 and 75% of our business today.
And Kristalina Georgieva of the IMF said that one of her big concerns is financial stability, that she is very concerned that people are not moving quickly enough to adapt the financial system to just how quickly some of these systematic learning programs can actually work. What are you doing about that? Is that sort of entering into any of your calculus?
We have some blunt instruments today that protect the markets, like our circuit breakers. We have single stock circuit breakers, market circuit breakers. But what you really want to do is prevent that type of deep fake from filtering into investment decisions. And I think that we don't have honestly, we're still working on what is the answer to that. There's a regulatory framework, but it's really more of a technical question of how do you validate the videos? Like, you could actually use blockchain technology to do that, by the way. So how do you create almost like a validation mechanism? And I do actually think media has a big role to play in that.
There was a very basic hack that we saw with the SEC account on Twitter only a week or so ago.
Which is ironic, considering that they're supposed to regulate it, and yet they were the ones that came out and said that they'd approve the Bitcoin ETF.
All right, so one thing that I think it almost looks as though they're starting to realize as they actually have these discussions is that blockchain solves all of this. Web3, identity, all of this gets solved with blockchain. In the future of validation, certification, authenticity, all the things that are so difficult to do on Web2, Web3 changes that. And I think now we're starting to see not only, companies like NASDAQ, but many others, especially in the financial center. And if you think about what Larry Fink talks about a lot, tokenizing the world, this is what he sees as the future for sure. We'll get into some more clips here. Goldman Sachs, of course, had their stock up after Q4 profits rise. This, of course, is another reason we're starting to see a lot more activity from last year. This goes back to fees. Fees is what is making these profitability. Most of these banks profitable right now in the first quarter earnings. And I think this is going to be the thing that starts to kind of go through WEF's theme, and that is, this is the future. We're starting to really see the impact on the global finance system. Let's get into another clip here. This gets into the IPO season potentially coming in and what that might mean for crypto as well. Listen in.
We have seen a real drop-off in IPOs. It was a really weak year for that, and people have been talking about interest rates needed to come down before they can. Are you seeing that actually as being a reality, that this year is going to be more robust, or are companies realizing that it's better for them to finance themselves in private markets and just sort of do it that way?
We have about 85 companies that have filed to go public on NASDAQ. So it means they're ready. They're in the SEC process, and they're just ready for the markets to be open. At the end of the day, it's really all about the investor. Are the investors ready to put risk capital to work? And also, investors predict the future. So if they believe that they're confident that we're not going to have higher rates, and we could and likely will have lower rates over time, then they can underwrite that, right? So they can actually put that into their model. A big unknown has become more known, and then inflation has come down, so the cost of doing business has come down, and that all, I think, gives them more confidence in being able to underwrite risk capital, which means more IPOs. So that's a long way of saying I do believe that there's the opportunity for more IPOs this year.
So, the thinking behind IPOs, I think, also translate well to what's happening in the blockchain space for ICOs, and that meaning the investor appetite. If there is investors believing that the macro environment possibly has some sort of softening, is there an opportunity here for risk assets going forward? So again, this could go back into another season of potential projects getting launched out there on crypto. And again, this is all being talked about over at WEF. Brad Garlinghouse, of course, also had a huge event there at WEF, kind of talking about kind of the future of what XRP is doing in Ripple. Listen into this clip right here. It's kind of surprising.
For Ripple versus the SEC lawsuit, when do we get a conclusion?
Look, but most of it has been resolved. There is a piece of the case that continues around institutional sales, because investment contracts where Ripple sold XRP to institutions who wanted to speculate. The irony there is, again, the SEC's one of their missions is to protect investors. How many of our institutional XRP sales did they lose money? None. So, what are we arguing about? I think Gary Gensler is doing the same thing over and over again, and it thinks that somehow he's going to win in court. He has continued to lose in court. I do think the chair of the SEC, Gary Gensler, has become a political liability in the United States. And I think at some point, there will be a new chair of the SEC, and I think that'll be a good thing for the American people.
Hey, listen, the fact that we've got Garlinghouse and many others calling for Gensler's head at WEF in front of the global elite, things are going to start maybe getting a little different out there for Mr. Gensler. So very big deal. Garlinghouse goes further into the potential of regulation on this next clip. Listen in.
Do you think that in 2024 there is the political will, given it's an election year as well, to pass some of these bills and bring them into law?
I said earlier I don't like to predict things based on time, and this one I will. I think this year there will be legislation that passes. I won't be as predictive about which one. I think likelihood is that the stablecoin, but I think we will see that in part because the U.S. Treasury wants it, right? I think the stablecoin market has really surprised people in some ways in terms of solving a real need.
So good statements there. I think this also just opens up more opportunity. Again, getting the global elite really to understand what's happening. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing for crypto. The minute that WEF gets crypto in its crosshairs, the likelihood is we're going to start to see a lot of movement around the globe beyond what we've seen in these emerging countries. So this is a big one for sure. Now, we couldn't go further unless we could talk about the potential IPO for what Ripple might look like and whether or not they'll do it. So listen in to what Brad had to say.
Recently, you may have read, we did a tender offer to our shareholders. Yeah. We've now repurchased over $1 billion of stock from our shareholders. That's something that's important to us, quite frankly, because it is not an immediate term priority to go public. In the United States, trying to go public with a very hostile regulator that has to approve your S1, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. Coinbase obviously had their S1 approved, and now the SEC is suing them for doing things that was outlined in their S1. Now, as I mentioned, there's a hearing tomorrow in the U.S. about some of that, but I think it's indicative of why would we want to subject ourselves to an SEC that is openly hostile to this industry?
So in terms of an IPO, an exit of some sort, is that sort of parked to the side at this point?
Yeah,
or are you looking elsewhere outside the U.S. for a listing?
Yes to all of those. But honestly, a lot of people go public because they need to raise capital.
Yeah.
Ripple's not really in a place where we need to raise capital. And so it is not a short-term priority. We're obviously keeping that option open, and we'll evaluate it as time continues. And we'll evaluate it again as we have new regulators sitting at the United States SEC.
Yeah, this is not good to have a major company after a big win in court to say that they're not taking a company IPO because of regulators. I mean, this is not normal, and it's definitely not healthy because this gets into more of a cyclical scenario around everybody looking at what's causing this. And this gets back to the Gensler situation. Speaking of that, you think about ETFs and what was been able to be accomplished with just what we've seen with the Bitcoin ETF. Garlinghouse goes a little bit further, talking about XRP as an ETF. Listen in.
The second interesting thing was the price of Ether skyrocketed immediately after on hopes that there could now next be an ETH ETF. What are the chances of that?
I think it's a certainty.
This year?
I'm not going to put a horizon on the time, but I think there will be other ETFs for sure.
An XRP one?
There will be other ETFs for sure.
but an XRP one?
I love this game we play. The sad part of that reality is we have a Bitcoin ETF only because a U.S. court said to the SEC, you're being arbitrary and capricious in your application of the law. What would be sad is if every ETF had to go through that same journey and for Gary Gensler to get smacked down by the U.S. court system again.
All right, so there's a little bit of indicator here around what is happening, in the sense of how courts are being used as maybe the instrument here to get by the SEC. Obviously, that was used by Grayscale to get a Bitcoin ETF approved. So the likelihood, could we see that in the ETH ETF, the XRP ETF? You kind of dodged that question. I want to go to another clip. This is by BNY Mellon, and they're talking about tokenized assets. And this is the bigger picture, I think, that WEF has a light bulb that came on now finally with blockchain and crypto. Listen in.
How excited are you about crypto? And I say this because you were the first major bank to offer custody services for crypto-related assets in 2022. So are you expanding that out? Are you kind of going to all of the parties that are being held here at Davos for the crypto space?
I'm skipping the crypto parties, but what we have been doing...
That's the right answer.
But what we've been focused on all along in the digital asset journey is the technology. Blockchain, we think, is going to be important for markets. Digital assets over time, tokenization, new assets being able to come into the mainstream financial system. Look, we touch 20% of all of the investable assets in the world. And so when there are ways to take assets that have not been easy to handle as part of the financial system and make them more mainstream in their operations, tokenization is an example of that, we're all for that.
So, some, comparisons and examples of this. This was Chainlink with them out on Twitter. CCIP now supporting cross-chain USDC transfers with new integration to Circle. So, again, back to stablecoins, back to the ability to utilize this in mainstream finance, I think is now being painted out within WEF. And if you look at AI as a narrative of WEF, that's true. The narrative, though, is a little bit more negative, meaning people are more concerned about that, which is everything from deepfakes to bot activities within exchanges, what we might see within the securities market, what we might see in traditional markets out there. So imagine that as a challenge and blockchain as a solution. So this, I think, is starting to come to form here with a lot of the people at WEF, which, remember, these are the people that run countries, that run major organizations around the world. I think this is definitely pointing in maybe a good direction, but at the same time, also always worry about when you're at the front of the line at WEF, and I think crypto is this year. This is a clip on Chainlink's CCIP. Listen in.
I think we'll start to see DeFi and TradFi converge, and I do firmly believe that banks, asset managers, and TradFi in general are the largest net customer of all DeFi protocols. We just haven't reached that place because they can't efficiently transact with each other, either on a legal basis or a technical basis. And both of those problems are being solved. So the legal clarity is coming. And on a technical basis, you have some of the things that we built, like CCIP, which is now being used in Web3 and in banking. Then you can be on a single standard where banks and Web3 applications can interact with each other.
All right, he hits on a couple of things there, is that these things are coming. A lot of the hurdles that we've held in the past few years have been kind of moved away. And I think we're going to see major advancements in crypto regulation, which will start to bring in finance in a big way for 2024. Hedera is also doing some big things over there. Upcoming Davos 2024, you see a little bit of their announcements, including them being on a panel. This, of course, is some of the people that are out there, but tokenizing everything to from close to back to your ticket to space. So I don't know. This is very intriguing that we've seen so many blockchain projects starting to show up. I mean, it happened last year at WEF to a certain extent. Actually, the miners, I think, had a little bit more activity there. But this year, it is moving into tokenized securities, into mainstream finance. And I think the Bitcoin ETF timing really brought this forward. And a lot of other things, I think, are starting to really break loose here for sure at WEF. All right, just as a reminder, guys, tomorrow is the Coinbase case resolve that's been going on for quite some time. And now we've got this coming to bear. And we're going to try to get, we will have Meta Lawman on later this week to kind of do an analysis of what Judge Failla is talking about. But he says here in this tweet, I won't predict how Judge Failla is going to rule on the Coinbase motion to dismiss until after the hearing tomorrow. So one thing he's confident about is that they will pose some tough questions to the SEC. If this happens, if we get a potential win, remember Failla was the judge on the Uniswap case, fully pretty much won in favor of Uniswap. If this happens with Coinbase, things are going to get interesting in the markets, whether it's altcoins. We're going to see a lot more new listings. We may see a whole slew of activity within exchanges that we haven't seen, including a lot of these delistings that have taken place on some of the biggest exchanges out there. So be on the watch for that. We'll try to bring that to you guys as soon as we have a little bit of word about it, and we will get MetaLaw on the show later this week. So make sure to stick around for that. Subscribe to the show right now so you'll get notified of things when we do it. And of course, if you're not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get into that as well. We do additional podcasts and research over there. Very easy to find us. Click the link down below. Catch me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.